Hello everybody, welcome back. I want to talk about belief systems today. What do I mean by that? I mean the things that we believe in as a nation. Now, I've said in the past, and it's been said in the past, that when speaking of belief systems, some belief systems can be positive, some belief systems can be negative. For example, you have certain religious sects that believe that it is not good to take medication. And they run the risk if they are ill, not taking medication, perhaps something very simple like an antibiotic that can help them, they run the risk of dying. And this belief system can be, as you can well imagine, a very dangerous belief system. Belief systems can also, bad belief systems can also be like infectious diseases. Infectious diseases in the body or in the organism, they can spread and ultimately cause the death of the organism, the death of the body or an individual. Bad belief systems can spread too. And the more they spread, the more they endanger the body, the organism, which in this case could be a nation. And I think right now in the United States we are operating under a very destructive belief system. It's a belief system which precludes us from doing the things we need to do, for example, to get out of this terrible economic mess. Some of the principal ideas or tenets in this belief system really go back to a basis in a gold standard, which we don't operate under anymore. The idea that the government's means are limited, that it is the individuals of the nation who fund through taxes the spending by government. And anyone could understand or should be able to understand, if you think that through to its logical conclusion, if taxes were necessary to fund government spending, there could never be deficit spending. Think about it in your own account. If you have to have funds in your account to go out and spend, and if you were precluded or barred from ever running an overdraft, then there could never be an overdraft. There couldn't be deficit spending. But somehow we don't understand this concept when it comes to government spending. The government spends in its own currency, and that currency is non-convertible. It's not backed by anything. There's no gold backing. We went off of that first in 1933 when Franklin Roosevelt made it illegal for Americans to own gold, and then finally in 1971 when Nixon closed the gold window. The currency floats freely. Governments, such as the U.S. federal government, they spend by simply putting a credit in a bank account. It's a keystroke on a computer terminal. That's it. Take a computer, you hit a keystroke, boom, the money's in there. I touched on this briefly in my last presentation when I talked about how every several years when we run up against that debt ceiling, effectively, I guess by definition you could say, we've run out of money or the government has run out of money. What do? It's not some mass collection of new revenues to keep spending ongoing. Congress simply comes together and raises the debt ceiling. Boom! There you go. More money to spend. So there's no limit on the amount of money the government spends. The only limit is really the only constraint, I should say, is really a political constraint. Obviously, Congress could decide at some point, well, we're not going to raise the debt ceiling, and thus we have run out of money by decree. Just as by decree they could say we'll keep it going for as long as we want because there is nothing backing it. Now, should we be afraid of this? Is this something, because you hear this, the old false term, they're printing money, which it is not printing money. These are electronic credits into the banking system and ends up to be the way in which government spends. Should we be afraid of this? Here is the answer. I think the rational answer, when you really look at this, is whether or not this sort of activity, this sort of spending, leads to the complete and total utilization of all the God-given resources of the nation and all the capital of the nation. And I'm talking about physical capital, like machinery and structures and infrastructure, and human capital. Human capital, all the people in the workforce. If spending by government led to a total use of all the physical resources, physical capital, and human capital of a nation, if we got to that point and pushed beyond that point, then you're talking about a sustained upward rise in inflation. However, at that point, when you achieve the full utilization of all your resources and all your capital, well, guess what? You're living at the highest level that you can possibly live. And some economists have said, one of them being the late Nobel laureate William Vickery, said that it has been 80 years. We have to go back to the 1920s. It was the last time that the United States ever really lived at its full potential. Until, I should say, since that time, at various levels one or another, we have lived below our potential. Below our potential. And what this means is we are sustaining a standard of living that is beneath the standard of living we should have because of a belief system. A belief system that precludes us from using all of the resources and capital that we have in this great, wonderful nation. And this is the real legacy that we pass along to our children and our grandchildren. It is not the debt. It is the lower standard of living that comes about as a result of not using the things you have to create wealth and prosperity. Think about a business. If you had a wonderful, fantastic business that was just the greatest wealth-creating machine, and you stood out there on the street with your arms folded like this and you didn't operate that business, well, you're not going to get very wealthy. It would also be irrational. And you know what they do to irrational people. If you see somebody irrational, behaving irrationally, walking down the street, somebody's going to come along, pick that person up and put him in a hospital to get treated. Same thing for a nation. As long as we persist in this irrational behavior or are so quick to label any effort by the government to sustain output and employment at a level that makes us reach our potential, every time we do that, if we are going to label that socialism and thus keep ourselves from doing that, we achieve over a period of time a lower standard of living than what we would have gotten had we used all of our resources and capital. And that is the real legacy that we pass along to our children and grandchildren. Not prosperity and wealth, but a lower standard of living. And we've accepted it tacitly because we've allowed the belief system to spread and permeate. And ultimately, if it is a very, very dangerous belief system, as I think this one is, it can lead to the end of the nation as we know it, which would be an awful thing. But this is the end of this video as I know it at this point. I'll be back for more. I hope you're enjoying these. We'll keep the comments coming, good or bad. I don't care. I'm happy you're watching. Take care. Have a great day. Have a great Memorial Day weekend. Bye.